There's something really cool about seeing the vision in your head slowly come to life. Even in these early stages, you start to get these little glimpses of what it could actually become. I made myself a promise, you see. I'm going to create something of my own. Growing up, I loved playing video games, playing with Lego, Bionicles, making dinosaurs out of a cardboard box. Simply said, I like creativity. And now that I'm a bit older, that passion turned into a love for art, design, branding, storytelling and animation. I've also developed a big interest in how the things I love are made and the people behind them. But recently I realized I don't only want to observe other people's creations. I want to be a part of it myself. So this year, 2026, I decided to pursue a lifelong dream and make a short film, which will be releasing at the end of this year, December 31st. The progress of making that short film I will be sharing with you here on this channel. Welcome back, my name is Philippe, and last episode I covered the planning phase of the film, gathering references, world building, sketching. I also introduced you a bit to the world and themes. In the film, we follow a robot, an AI, in a desert. If you haven't seen the first episode yet, I'll link it in the description. This time we'll dip our toes a little bit into the actual development of the film, or like more a bit of R&D and experimenting. So let's get into it. In February I had one objective, seeing if I'm a fraud or not. As I mentioned before, there are a lot of things I need to learn first to make this film. It's also a big reason why I wanted to do this in the first place. And the most important skills I need right now are 3D modeling, my character model, environment props, animation, and simulations. Stuff like footprints being formed in the sand, particles flowing in the wind, stuff like that. But those I will do later on. What I wanted to focus on first was animation, specifically a walking cycle. But to animate you first need a rig, and to animate a rig you first need a model. So that's where I started. I made the first iteration of Remus, the main character of the film. I'm excited to look back on this someday when the final film releases, because I really hope I've improved by then. But how he looks right now wasn't the point though. I didn't want to waste time making anything polished yet. Originally I wanted to build him out of simple cubes even, but I figured this would be slightly more interesting to work with. With the model done, I could start rigging. Rigging means building a skeleton of bones inside your 3D mesh. The mesh being the actual visible surface of the model, and then animating those bones using keyframes. You can also add constraints and extra rules to these bones. Things like this bone can only rotate by so much, or like this bone must follow this other bone, to create more complex controlled movement. To learn it I followed this video. It's a really great tutorial. And the goal was to make a walking animation with this rig, but I ended up skipping it though. But for now it was enough. I at least got the absolute basics down of rigging. For my second, more serious learning exercise, I wanted to set up a hand rig and make a proper animation. The scene I had in mind was a mechanical hand spinning a die between his fingers. Something like this, basically. Same approach as before. I first modeled some rough finger shapes to work with, nothing fancy. Just something interesting enough to rig. I assigned bones to each finger segment, and already it was starting to look cool. And that's when I discovered the magic of inverse kinematics. Well, not really. I kind of already knew about it. I came across the concept years ago in some random Reddit thread while working on Rekindled, a game I was developing, which I talked about in episode 1. What I've been doing with Remus was called forward kinematics. You move each bone manually, one by one, from the roots of the chain outward. With inverse kinematics, you move the end of the chain, for example a fingertip, a wrist, a foot, anything, and all the bones behind it follow automatically in a physically believable way. Applying inverse kinematics to my fingers over here, it was genuinely exciting. Even seeing the small amount of animation, it made the whole film flash before my eyes, you know? I also watched this video by Dominic Art for inspiration. It reminded me that there are levels to this, and I still have a long way to go. Another thing I wanted to test in February was environments. The film is set in a desert, and I wanted to see if I could actually make one look good. I am aiming for photorealism, and if something is slightly off, the scale, the shapes, the lighting, anything really, it starts to look a bit uncanny. There are plenty of high quality assets you can download on platforms like Fab, for example, like photoscanned rocks, but I don't really want to do that. I want to build my own assets. So the goal was either to make a rock or a cliffside. I didn't really know exactly what I was going to make yet. I thought I would figure it out along the way. I watched this video for inspiration. He uses brushes. I tried it myself, and there's definitely potential here, but I found the approach a bit too manual for what I had in mind. Ideally, I want something procedural, a system that could generate a big canyon, a cliff face, or a small rock, all with the same logical, geological consistency. So I pulled some reference shots from Unsplash and started playing around in geometry nodes. I built a system where small pebbles are distributed on flatter surfaces of a rock, with controls for the minimum angle required for pebbles to spawn and their density along the z-axis. But I quickly realized I was being a bit too ambitious for now. It wasn't really working out. So what I'll do instead is make or sculpt whatever, a rock, as detailed as I can, and translate that workflow into a procedural system. But that's something for later. I didn't focus that much. In the meantime, I watched a lot of videos about achieving photorealism in Blender, mainly from this channel, Extra 3D. One of the most important takeaways was proper texturing, layering multiple textures on top of each other, building up detail, adding imperfections. So I started to focus on that. I reasoned that a desert rock would have sand slowly accumulating in its crevices over time, pushed in by wind for example, and near the base there'd be a natural buildup of sand where it meets the ground. So on a simple cube, I started figuring out how to simulate this. I found that an ambient occlusion node works well for detecting edges and crevices in a model, and a simple gradient texture could blend a sandy material up from the bottom. I applied some decent textures from Polyhaven onto this node setup. It was starting to look promising. Then I moved on to a ground shader. I combined 3 Polyhaven textures again, 2 sand textures mixed with 1 rocky pebble surface. And that's when I finally figured out what displacement is and how to actually use it correctly. It truly is a game changer. I liked where this was heading, so I wanted to put together a first concept teaser. I painted a handprint directly into the ground using Blender's texture paint and blended a quick shader around it. And yes, it is supposed to have 6 fingers. Let's get a bit into the lore of the story now. In this world, humanity is absent. Maybe fully gone, maybe it still remains somewhere, who knows. I'm not spoiling this yet. But Remus, our protagonist, and whoever else inhabits this world, they never really encountered humans. They have never really experienced humanity. They only know us through the data we left them behind. Imperfect, incomplete data fragments. Memories of humankind. So when they try to reconstruct what we look like, how we reasoned, what we did, they're just guessing. They are essentially hallucinating, overshooting with wrong data. In early AI image generation, it could never get the hands correct. There were always too many, they were like mixed together, they were the wrong proportions. And in Remus's world, those kind of problems, they play out on a civilizational scale. This concept teaser will not be in the final film, but the idea will be, although in a different kind of format. So that was February. Some important steps have been made. I'd say the foundation has been laid. Rigging, animating, texturing. Now we build from here. I genuinely enjoyed the process of figuring these things out and getting better at it. If you want to follow along more closely, I post more frequent updates on my socials at Puchoki everywhere. And if you have any tips or feedback, leave a comment down below. I'd love to hear from you. So thank you. That's all for now. See you in the next one.